suggest heavy sustained long-term use from adolescence to adulthood has the potential to exacerbate symptoms of those with a genetic predisposition for schizophrenia. And although there is strong evidence that refutes this, it does lead one to question, could there be a better way of deterring children from using, rather than letting dealers decide what age is appropriate?
For the last 10 years, our children across the United States have said that it's easier to buy illegal drugs than it is to buy beer and cigarettes.
It's harder to get beer because you have to go through a regulated establishment that's going to check ID, that's going to have those safeguards in place, that isn't just going to sell it to you because you got 40 bucks in your pocket.
The guy down on the street corner, he doesn't want to know how old they are. He don't want to see an ID. He says, show me the money. And if they get the money, it doesn't matter if that child is 4 years old, they're going to get the dope.
If you can't control the sale of the product, how on earth are you going to keep it out of the hands of kids?
Could we be the creators of what we now see as some of our biggest problems? Have our solutions been prelude to our worst fears?
You know, the use of the criminal law for the basis of public health is a wholly bad idea, no matter how you cut it.
It doesn't work. You cannot legislate morality.
One person can say it's immoral to legalize it just as much as someone can say it's immoral not to legalize it. It doesn't get you anywhere. You have to have a rational policy debate by talking about the consequences.
Now, I've had young people tell me that, well, your generation had a martini and that was your crutch, and why can't we have our own kind of crutch? You know what? Why don't you be a generation that doesn't have to have any kind of crutch?
It's a lot easier argument. If you just say, oh, it's immoral, then you don't have to debate why it is that alcohol kills so many more people than marijuana, or why it is that tobacco takes 7 years off your life and we can't establish that marijuana does anything particularly.
If people do drugs and they commit crimes while on those drugs, they should in fact be punished. But you can't punish someone for something that hurts no one.
We should legalize marijuana, tax the hell out of it, and put every dime back into the healthcare system.
Taxation and legalization? Doesn't that seem a little extreme? Wouldn't it be better to just decriminalize?
The distinction is simple. Legalization of marijuana makes it a product that is legally available to adults.
That doesn't mean that there's unregulated distribution, unregulated sale, and unregulated use.
The decriminalization of marijuana still makes it an offense. You're not going to go to jail for it under a decriminalized model, but society is still saying no, 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 no.
It doesn't address the problems of organized crime, and it doesn't create a situation where you have retail sales.
Decriminalization is just kind of a goofy concept. To say that it's legal to own something, to use it, to possess it, but not to produce it or sell it, just seems like this illogical position, because where did this stuff come from?
It's the worst of both worlds. Sends out an incredibly bad message. It should be controlled like alcohol, like tobacco.
The total impact for the U.S. budget from legalizing marijuana and taxing it at rates like alcohol and tobacco is somewhere in the $10 to $14 billion range. It can be used to pay for healthcare costs. It can be used to rebate to lower taxes and give people lower tax rates. It can be used for highways, for hospitals, for national defense. It's $14 billion and can be used for whatever its best use is.
The production or the harvesting, the packaging, the sales of marijuana could be handled essentially the way we handle alcohol. You sell to a kid, you sell to somebody under the influence, your license is in jeopardy. That license ought to be hard to get and easy to lose.
It seems to make sense. It's a little jarring, but nowhere are these issues more relevant than here in BC. Yes, marijuana is illegal here. And yes, police actively pursue growers and dealers. But that hasn't stopped the market from thriving. It's believed that the illegal BC marijuana trade industry employs anywhere from 90 to 150,000 people. And the product is now known around the world. It's even been given its own name.
BC Bud.
Bud. BC Bud.
British Columbia Bud.
I don't know what you are meaning.
BC Bud?
BC Bud. You guys know what BC Bud is?
No.
You guys know where British Columbia is?
No. Isn't it in Britain?
No, it's in Canada. When I say BC is famous for
pot,
weed and hippies,
mountain, sea, marijuana.
I used to think of the beachcombers back in the days, but now I just think of that BC Bud.
Do you know what BC Bud is?
No.
Oh, it's really well known. BC bud is bud that comes from British Columbia, and that's why they call it BC bud or Beasters. Dude, you got the Beasters? Yeah, I got the Beasters, which means you got bud from BC.
You know what the word grow up is?
I'd say it's pretty common knowledge here what a grow up is.
People do them in their houses or in their basements.
I'm surprised it's not in their dictionary. A grow up is something that happens inside somebody's house, like one of our friends or something, and they just grow weed inside their house.
Do you know anybody that's growing marijuana?
I don't, well, no.
Kelowna, my hometown. With a population of only 100,000, Kelowna is said to house well over 1,000 grow-ops. A police officer stated in the local paper, if they were to bust one grow-op every day for a year, they would still be nowhere near getting rid of them. And Kelowna is not alone.
Where are they in BC? They're everywhere. They're in every single corner of the province. There is no community in the province that doesn't have grows and hasn't had an increase in grows.
But the fact is that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of grow-ops all over British Columbia. And the most common thing you hear when they rate a grow-op is from the neighbors is, I had no idea they were growing pot on my street.
You know, if you actually took my estimates seriously, that there were 17,000 grow-ops in British Columbia in the year 2000, if you took that seriously, you're looking at roughly 1 out of every 100 dwelling units in British Columbia. We need to have a sense of that.
Not bad for a province with a population of only 4 million people.
It's certainly changed a great deal from the 70s and 80s when it was an import-export business to the domestic production business of the 90s and beyond.
That would make us Columbia North. We're talking a lot of production.
The reality is that there's a huge range of people involved in the marijuana industry in British Columbia. It's not a hierarchy. People don't beat you up if you go into the marijuana industry. It ranges from people growing a few plants to members of motorcycle clubs and others possibly being involved in the business.
Police at one time used to attend to every single call that came to their attention. Somebody would call and say, I think there's a grow. Police would do an investigation, do a full investigation. Well, that has dropped over 7 years to where it's only about half the time.
But it seems to me that if we look around and talk to people who are living in the real world, one of the things we discover is that we don't understand it very well. And when we see these numbers like 1% of all dwelling units potentially are involved in marijuana grow-ops, it certainly ought to give our politicians perspective on what it is they're trying to do.
So how does one find these grow-ops? For police, it involves the use of forward-looking infrared cameras that can detect the above-normal heat radiating from a grow-op, or the sniff test. But if all else fails, this, Grow Watch. Communities have become so flooded with grow-ops in BC that some neighborhoods have started their own watch programs. This one, set up by the Chilliwack RCMP, even has an education package with phases: training, neighborhood cooperation, certification. Once certified, you are able to hang this sign which shows that you are a neighborhood that does not approve of marijuana grow operations. There are questions provided to citizens in order to aid them in identifying a grow-op. Questions like, do the residents keep to themselves? Was the sound of construction heard coming from the basement soon after occupants took over the residence? Is there condensation visible on the windows? Is the yard unkept? The education package does state that a positive response to one or some of these questions does not necessarily indicate that the residents are involved in criminal activity. Maybe that's a good thing. But why is it that grow-ups are popping up in virtually every neighborhood of BC? How much money can actually be made by simply growing some plants in your basement? And what do these grow-ups look like anyway? We finally got a grower. Right now we're driving to meet them. It's around 8 lights. It's not a huge show. This is what they use for clippers and stuff like that. When they hire clippers to do a show, you put these on, and if people are looking from the outside, it just looks pretty much like you're wearing sunglasses. But when you're on, I mean, I can't put them on right now because I'm driving. Won't be able to see. This is everyone's getting glasses. Director, thanks. Other producer. Where's my phone? We just wait for the phone call, so we'll keep in line for when this comes to. Oh, I see a vehicle pulled up. Maybe that's them. Hello? Okay, so put the glasses on. Okay.
Now, can you tell them we're just gonna have the camera running, but we're gonna have the lens cap on? Is that cool?
Okay. Yeah. No. Hey, Diggs, we're gonna have the camera running, but we're gonna have the cap on, so there's no video. Shit. Yeah, just do it. Just keep it on. Just put the cap on. How you guys feeling? Feel that heart rate increased? So you're coming in the back seat? Yeah. All right. Okay. Good.
You want the camera?
Yeah. Cool. You're not feeling motion sickness?
Oh yeah, now I'm feeling it. I'm feeling sick.
You know, we're just gonna hold people's arms and kind of guide them inside.
Yeah. That's what I was saying, so I don't fall on my face here. A real grow-op. The grower admitted that this wasn't the biggest of grow-ops. In fact, it was probably on the small end of the scale in terms of size. But I really didn't care. There are just so many things to see. The lights, the tools, the power, the pots, and of course, the marijuana. What do you guys do for the smell? I noticed there's like a big...
Well, we got this carbon filter here or whatever, and it just kind of filters the air in there, and then it goes underneath the house, and we have it so it goes into like a dog shed. It's like I'm in the beginning stage and I'm learning.
Over here, there's also another room in there. So you have a total of, is it 8 lights?
8 lights, yeah, they go on 12 hours. This one runs 12 hours in the daytime, this one comes on 8 at night.
Did you say like a majority of the guys you know are just growing to earn some extra money?
Yeah, it's like they have normal jobs, and you know, they're normal 9 to 5 type of guys.
The grower told me he cropped out about every 2 months, and every crop was worth about $20,000. That's $120,000 a year. Even though this was a small grow-up, the numbers didn't seem small at all. If those kind of numbers are coming out of a setup of 8 lights, what kind of numbers are coming out of the big ones? And where do you find them? Well, it would seem just about everywhere. Barges, semi-trucks.
Whether it was for the mobility of it, or whether it was an attempt to disguise the smell of burning marijuana, of growing marijuana, in any event, it's unusual for that reason.
Even in train cars? Yes, it seems as though even our beloved caboose cannot escape grow-op fever. When we read that 20 train cars were buried underground to grow marijuana, busted or not, we had to see this. So we set out. But not before asking our sound man if we could use his SUV, and coaxing him with a little free gas. Where we were going, we would need it. We're in the boondocks, way up here. You wouldn't want to go over that puppy. This is what they brought up diesel fuel to power the generators in. With how much they were growing and how much the generators needed, I mean, that's a full truckload there. And finally, after a few hours on the highway and climbing up the side of a mountain, we get there. We had to go into 4 low just to get up here. And you can see I'm dressed right. I'm in jeans and frickin' sneakers. Fuck. My feet are cold. There's no neighbors. Like, look to the right. There's nobody there. Nobody here, nobody there. I mean, I imagine they're probably laid this way. They've been obviously following you, like where you're getting your diesel, where you're getting the tanks, where you buy 10 train carts, where you buy 150 lights. These are diesel pumps, and it looks like there's still diesel leaking in these things.